At 4:46 on a Friday afternoon, Marcus Reed stood in a conference room while 12 coworkers ate grocery store sheet cake and congratulated him on a job he had never accepted. Someone had written, "Good luck, Marcus," across the top in blue icing. Nate Holloway, who had worked beside him for 9 years, handed Marcus a paper plate and leaned against the conference table. "So where are you headed next?" Marcus looked down at the security badge clipped to his belt. For 19 years, a badge like that had opened warehouse doors, meeting rooms, and eventually the executive floor. It had also opened parts of his life that were supposed to stay closed: Sunday dinners, quiet mornings, and the hours after midnight when a delayed truck or a failed inventory count became his problem. Now, at 45, the career behind that badge paid him $118,000 a year. On Monday, the badge would open nothing. Marcus had no new title waiting. No larger company had recruited him. His next full-time paycheck was still 5 months away, and when it finally arrived, the salary would be almost half as large. But no one in the room knew that. They saw a calm man leaving a good job and assumed he had found a better one. They thought this was another promotion, another step upward, another move that could be explained by a bigger number. Marcus did not correct them. He just unclipped the badge and set it beside the untouched piece of cake. What those 12 people could not see was that Marcus had already crossed a line most workers spend their lives looking for. He was not retired. He was not rich in the way people usually recognize. He still lived in the same condo, drove the same aging car, and compared prices at the grocery store. But the next paycheck no longer had the only vote. And that kind of escape is so quiet that sometimes even the person living it does not recognize it at first. 19 years earlier, Marcus would have recognized the opposite feeling immediately. In 2007, he was 26 and working as a distribution scheduling coordinator in Kansas City, Missouri. His gross salary was $52,000. After estimated taxes, insurance, and payroll deductions, about $3,250 reached his checking account each month. Almost all of it already belonged somewhere else. Rent and utilities took $920. Transportation cost about $575 between the car payment, insurance, fuel, and repairs. Food, phone service, and healthcare took another $685. Minimum payments on his credit cards, student loans, and auto loan required $650. Irregular expenses and the small pieces of ordinary life used about $280. Total monthly spending, $3,110. Margin, $140. Marcus owned a few things, but he owed far more. He had $2,900 in cash, $3,600 in his 401k, and a car worth roughly $8,400. Against that sat $7,900 in credit card debt, $29,400 in student loans, and a $13,600 auto loan. His net worth was negative $36,000. That number did not frighten him as much as the $140 did. A negative net worth felt distant. The monthly margin felt personal. It was one tire, one medical bill, or one missed shift away from disappearing. So Marcus kept the company phone on the nightstand. When it rang, he answered. When a supervisor asked him to cover a weekend, he found a way. When friends planned something 2 weeks ahead, Marcus said, "I should be there," because his own calendar was never fully his. He told himself this was what reliable people did. And part of that was true. Marcus was good under pressure. He could look at a late shipment, a short-staffed warehouse, and a page of conflicting delivery windows and find the least painful solution. Being needed made him valuable. It also made him available. Over the years, Marcus received promotions. The salary climbed. The apartment became a modest condo. The credit card balance fell. His job title grew longer. But each step upward came with a hidden exchange. More money bought better furniture and more breathing room. It also brought more people who expected Marcus to answer. The cage had improved lighting, but the door still did not belong to him. Marcus slowly began to understand that a bigger paycheck could make life more comfortable without making it more optional. If every raise became a new obligation, then the salary had increased while the dependence stayed exactly the same. So when his income started rising, he made one rule. Before the new paycheck could change his lifestyle, part of it had to change his leverage. Marcus never called his system financial independence. He did not have a dramatic spreadsheet counting down the days until retirement. He did not believe one perfect investment would rescue him. He simply wanted fewer decisions to be made by fear. He gave his money 4 jobs. The first job was to remove the expensive debt. Marcus kept the required payments going on everything, then aimed extra money at the credit cards. When a raise arrived, he did not ask how much more apartment, car, or entertainment it could buy. He moved at least half of the increase toward debt, retirement contributions, or savings before he became used to seeing it in checking. That distinction mattered. Most spending does not feel permanent when it begins. A nicer car is just one payment. A larger home is just a few $100s more. Another subscription barely changes the month. But fixed expenses quietly decide how much pressure a job is allowed to apply. The second job was to keep those fixed expenses from growing as quickly as his income. Marcus did not freeze his life in 2007. He bought the condo. He replaced furniture. He traveled occasionally. He helped his sister when she needed it. But he tried to make upgrades slowly enough that every promotion increased the gap between what he earned and what he was required to spend. The third job was long-term accumulation. His 401k contributions happened automatically. Later, he added a Roth IRA. Employer contributions and market performance helped the balances grow, though neither was guaranteed and the path was not smooth. Some years the statements rose quickly. Other years he contributed for months and watched the total fall anyway. Marcus kept going because that money had a long horizon. But he noticed a problem. A large retirement balance could make his future look secure while doing very little for a decision he might need to make next Tuesday. Retirement accounts are not simply untouchable before age 59 and a half. Rules, taxes, possible penalties, and exceptions are more complicated than that. But Marcus did not want an urgent job decision to depend on an early withdrawal. So he gave his money a 4th job. He began building what he privately called permission money. First it was a cash reserve. Then, after that reserve became large enough for near-term emergencies, some additional money went into a taxable brokerage account invested for longer goals. He never pretended the two were interchangeable. Cash and Treasury securities were stable enough for a planned transition. Taxable investments were accessible, but their value could fall, and selling them could create tax consequences. One bucket was for absorbing a hit. The other was for widening the future. Together, they created something his 401k statement could not: the ability to wait. Marcus was not trying to make work disappear. He was trying to prevent one employer, one manager, or one paycheck from becoming the single point of failure in his life. For years, the system felt unimpressive. There was no moment when he woke up rich. There were only small transfers, lower balances on debt statements, automatic contributions, and raises that did not fully become new spending. Then, in 2017, the company changed his schedule. And Marcus discovered what all those quiet decisions had actually purchased. The new schedule rotated nights and weekends. Management presented it as temporary, but no one could say what temporary meant. Marcus had been through enough operational changes to recognize a permanent arrangement wearing temporary language. 10 years earlier, he would have accepted it before the meeting ended. This time, he went home and opened the accounts he had been building in the background. Outside his retirement plan, Marcus had roughly 7 months of essential expenses available. Not 7 months of his salary. 7 months of the life he actually had to fund. That difference changed the conversation. The next morning, Marcus told his manager the rotating schedule would not work for him. The manager reminded him that he did not have another position lined up. Marcus knew. The company refused to change the schedule, and Marcus resigned without a formal offer from anywhere else. For the first 2 weeks, the freedom did not feel like freedom. He woke before the alarm. He checked his phone even though no one from work was calling. At the grocery store, every purchase felt larger because no paycheck was scheduled to replace it. But the bills cleared. Marcus used the cash he had prepared. He did not add to the credit card balance. He did not pull money from his 401k. He did not accept the first available job simply to stop the discomfort. The gap lasted 7 weeks. Then he accepted a planning role with better hours and more room to grow. When people asked why he had left the old company, Marcus called it a career move. That answer sounded normal. It fit inside the language everyone understood. But it was not the whole truth. The important event was not that Marcus found another job. It was that for 7 weeks, he did not have one, and fear still did not get to make every decision. That was the first proof that his financial system worked. Still, Marcus did not think he had escaped anything. He treated the experience as a one-time emergency, returned to work, and began climbing again. 9 years later, his financial assets would pass $1 million. And he would still reach for the phone at 2 in the morning. By 2026, Marcus had become a distribution planning manager. His salary was $118,000. His consumer debt was gone. His condo was worth about $257,000, with $109,000 left on the mortgage. Between cash, Treasury securities, a taxable brokerage account, his 401k, and a Roth IRA, he had accumulated $1,022,000 in financial assets. His estimated net worth was about $1,175,000. Those numbers looked decisive on a spreadsheet. Marcus did not feel decisive. One Sunday night, he canceled dinner with his sister after an inventory discrepancy appeared in 3 warehouses. No one explicitly ordered him to stay home. They did not have to. Marcus opened his laptop before anyone asked. At 2:13 Monday morning, he finally closed it. Then he noticed the personal spreadsheet still open behind the company dashboard. His core spending was about $3,200 a month, or $38,400 a year. He held $87,000 in cash and Treasury securities. Another $236,000 sat in a taxable brokerage account. That account could fluctuate, and selling investments could create taxes, so Marcus did not count it as cash. But it was still capital outside his retirement accounts. For years, he had measured progress by asking how long he could survive without a paycheck. That night, the question changed. Why was he still arranging his life as if missing one paycheck would destroy it? The answer arrived later that week. Priya Shah, the regional vice president, asked Marcus to meet in her office. The company was consolidating planning leadership in Dallas. Marcus could relocate, accept a promotion paying $132,000, and continue on the executive track. Or his current position would end. Priya expected him to ask about the moving package. Instead, Marcus asked for the weekend. He spent Saturday testing the numbers. He included 5 months without regular income. He increased his expected monthly cost to about $4,050 to account for temporary health coverage and transition expenses. He reviewed the mortgage, the reserve, possible market declines, and the difference between money he could access now and money intended for later. The plan was not risk-free. No spreadsheet could promise when he would find another job, what the market would do, or how future healthcare costs would change. It showed something narrower and more useful. Marcus had built enough flexibility for this decision. On Monday, he declined the promotion. Priya looked genuinely surprised. "What are you moving to?" Marcus had spent 19 years preparing to leave a job he could not afford to lose. He had never prepared an answer for the moment when he could. News moved through the office before Marcus had decided how to explain it. People assumed he had accepted a senior role somewhere else. Nate organized the farewell cake. Someone circulated a card. Priya asked twice whether Marcus was ready to share the name of the new company. He kept saying, "I'm taking some time." It sounded evasive even to him. Marcus did not want to turn his account balances into office conversation. He also knew the phrase financial independence would create the wrong picture. He was 45, still had a mortgage, and had no intention of spending the next 40 years pretending risk no longer existed. But saying nothing had a cost. His coworkers filled the silence with the only story that made sense to them: a capable man left a good salary because someone else offered more. At the farewell gathering, Nate handed him a plate of cake and asked where he was headed next. Marcus looked at the badge on his belt. "I'm still figuring that out." The answer ended the conversation, but it did not end the question. That evening, his sister Alana came over with takeout. She did not ask what his portfolio was worth. She did not ask whether leaving was smart. She asked, "What are you going to do on Monday?" Marcus started to describe practical tasks. Return the company phone. Compare health plans. Update his resume. Schedule an oil change. Alana shook her head. "No. I mean when nobody needs you at 7 in the morning. What are you going to do?" Marcus had no answer. Money had removed the immediate threat. It had not given him an identity outside work. For 19 years, reliability had been more than a professional trait. It was how Marcus proved that he mattered. Every late-night call delivered the same exhausting message: something was wrong, and he was the person trusted to fix it. The silence waiting for him on Monday was not automatically peaceful. It was empty. Financial independence and psychological independence had arrived on different schedules. For the first month, Marcus treated the break like a project. He walked early, completed household repairs he had postponed, and met Alana for lunch without placing his phone face up on the table. He also checked his accounts more often than necessary. The reserve declined exactly as planned. It still felt wrong. 7 weeks after leaving, Marcus received an offer for $126,000. The title was familiar. The responsibilities matched his experience. The salary would restore the rhythm he understood. Then he reached the final page. Rotating weekends. Availability outside normal business hours. Marcus stared at the language for several minutes. The offer did not threaten his finances. It threatened to make the previous decision meaningless. He reviewed the same plan again. Cash and Treasury securities covered the transition without forcing him to sell investments during a bad week. The taxable account widened his options, but he did not need to treat it like a checking account. His retirement assets stayed invested for long-term goals. Most important, he had time. Marcus clicked decline. That second no mattered more than the first. The first had removed him from a job. The second proved he was no longer shopping for the same cage with a different company logo. The full-time paycheck remained absent for 5 months. At roughly $4,050 a month, the transition cost about $20,250. That was real money. Freedom did not make the expense imaginary, it made the expense manageable within a plan built for this purpose. During those months, Marcus volunteered twice a week at a regional food bank. The organization had grown quickly, and its inventory system had not grown with it. Marcus began fixing small problems, delivery windows that overlapped, donations logged twice, pallets sent to sites that lacked enough storage. The work was familiar. The relationship to it was not. At the end of the day, he went home. Renee Coleman, the executive director, eventually offered him a position as inventory systems coordinator. It paid $58,000 a year and included health benefits. He would work 4 days a week. There were deadlines and difficult weeks, but no overnight phone rotation. The salary was about 51% lower than the one he had left. Marcus accepted. From the outside, the choice could look like a collapse in earning power. Inside his actual life, the job covered much of his current spending, protected his time, preserved health coverage, and reduced the need to draw from investments. He had not found a universal formula for retirement. Taxes, future expenses, market returns, and health needs could still change. He had found a role that fit the flexibility he had spent 19 years building. His money had not purchased permanent safety. It had purchased bargaining power. On his first morning at the food bank, Marcus wore the same blue shirt he had worn to his farewell party. Renee gave him a simple name badge. Marcus Inventory Systems. He clipped it to his belt, then paused. The old security badge had opened more impressive doors. It had carried a larger title and a salary people understood immediately. It also represented a place that could reach into almost any hour of his week. This badge did not prove that Marcus was retired. It did not prove that $1 million was enough for everyone, or that taking a pay cut was always wise. His decision worked because his debts, spending, accessible reserves, long-term assets, benefits, and willingness to keep earning had all changed together. The badge meant something simpler. This was where he had chosen to be. Most of his former coworkers never learned the full story. They thought Marcus had changed companies, adjusted his title, and continued working like everyone else. In one sense, they were right. He still had a commute. He still solved inventory problems. He still received a paycheck. But on Friday evening, Marcus placed the badge in a kitchen drawer. It stayed there all weekend. Maybe that is why escaping the rat race is so difficult to recognize. The outside of your life may barely change. The condo, the car, and even the kind of work can remain familiar. The change is in what gets to decide for you. How much would you need before the next paycheck stopped having the only vote, and would you recognize the moment when you reached it? Marcus closed the drawer. Work finally had to compete with the rest of his life.